The FBI says it has recovered the stark black flag of the Islamic State extremist group from the pickup truck that a U.S. Army veteran from Texas smashed into New Year's partygoers in New Orleans. Wednesday morning's attack killed 15 people and injured dozens more. The rampage turned festive Bourbon Street into a grim scene of victims, bloodied bodies, and pedestrians fleeing for safety inside bars and restaurants. During an address in Maryland on Wednesday, U.S. President Joe Biden said Americans' hearts are with the people of New Orleans.
After the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours, to all the families of those who were killed, to all those who were injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come. I want to thank our brave first responders and law enforcement personnel who stopped the attacker in his tracks before he could kill or injure even more people. And I want to thank you to everyone at the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, including the FBI, for working nonstop to investigate this heinous act.
Andrew Donaldson from OrdinaryTimes.com has more on what is known about the attack.
We know he was an Army veteran. We know that he was a U.S. citizen. And we know that this has already caused problems with how this story is being reported and covered and investigated. There's a couple layers here we got to peel through. One is the initial reaction to this. The press conference was an absolute disaster where they had the FBI director overriding the mayor on whether this was or wasn't a terrorist attack. You had a U.S. senator jumping in and taking over when he really didn't have any relevant information. The communication on these things needs to be a lot better because it just feeds the conspiracy theories and the hot mess online on top of it, because everybody goes online and starts snooping for what is or is not the background of this particular individual. Now, as the investigation rolls out, we're starting to find out some things that still need to be delved into, but it does look like this is an individual who had a mostly normal life and somewhere along the line got himself radicalized either online or with a small group of supporters, and this will have to be investigated out. Now, this leads to the physical security of what happened here. Perversely enough, New Orleans was actually redoing their security plan for the upcoming Super Bowl in February, and that's one of the ways that he actually got down into Bourbon Street in the first place. So those sorts of things have to be addressed. And then, of course, we have the terrorism part of this. Is this a part of a wider scheme, or is this another individual that has broke bad? We've seen this before, places like Fort Hood, people with Army experience or military experience, and then they end up perpetrating an attack. Is there links to that sort of thing? So there's a lot to look through here. There's obviously what he claims. There looks like personal stuff, lots of layers, and we need to be patient as we peel this back and get a thorough investigation and not just fly off the handle and not be prepared for the next time one of these things happen. Local reaction is interesting here. New Orleans is, of course, a major tourist hub. It's one of the most unique cities in the entire world, not just in the U.S. And they're used to big events like this. There's a reason the Super Bowl keeps going back there. There's a reason something like the Sugar Bowl happens there every year. They're really good at hosting major events. So the locals really get concerned with things like this because, remember, this is a one-day event for the news, and it's a bad thing, but they have to have tourism year-round to keep functioning. They don't want to get a reputation for this sort of thing. The federal response to this has not been great. Communication needs to be much, much better, especially public-facing communication. I understand there are legalities why they don't want to come out and say something is terrorism because that's a very specific charge in federal law. But you also have to manage these things better and talk in a way normal people can react to and relate to. And when you have things like the FBI overriding the mayor of the city at a public press conference, that's a really bad look and something that needs to be dealt with immediately, because that affects how these investigations are portrayed in the public, and it portrays how the public in a representative democracy thinks of their government. Well, obviously, the biggest thing was you just only have so many resources. And when you have a mass casualty event, most of the city resources already had themselves a very, very long day. It was completely appropriate to postpone this at least one day. Now, you postpone it past that, you start getting into schedule conflicts, not only for the facility itself, but also the surrounding area, because you got 70,000 people coming to this thing. That's a lot of hotel and airfare and travel and things like that. You don't want to inconvenience them any more than you already have to. So I think it's appropriate to do it a one-day pushback. Plus, this is a college football playoff, so it would affect things down the line. But again, the Super Bowl's coming. New Orleans hosts a lot of events that are big events. This is something that they are good at. I think they can bounce back quickly, but the delay was appropriate. A further delay probably isn't going to gain you a whole lot.